If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Khalid Mohammed. He's not late tonight. Just so you all know, S2 and I, we took away his Xbox last night. That's his grounding for being late last night and for worrying all of us. Below him, my good friend Randy Nancer back home in Texas, combat wounded Green Beret, Team Carnival. And below him, our in-house 007, Jeff MD, 26-year CIA operative, author extraordinaire. And Mike Glover will be joining us at the top of the hour. Tonight's main topic is going to be urban evasion and extraction tactics. And the theme of that portion of tonight's broadcast will be, moving through hostile areas, lockdown environments. We're going to cover malls, trauma centers, everything that you can think of for a soft target, and how to escape and how to avoid, actually first, how to identify kill zones and then how to avoid those kill zones, which some people probably aren't aware of. So before we do that, let's get the conflicted question out of the way first and foremost. For those of you not familiar, conflictedthegame.com, 14 card games set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. And there's always an element of morality in these questions, hence the name conflicted. So tonight's conflicted question: your son or daughter died because someone who had a lot of food didn't want to share. They refused every attempt to barter with you, and you feel they did it out of selfish greed more than anything. Would you plot revenge against them, or do you have the right to do as they please, or do they have the right, to do as they please with their resources? So hang out until the end of tonight. You'll get Khalid's answer, Mike Glover's answer, and my answer at that point in time. We want to see your answers in the live chat or the comments down below. Of course, Randy and Jeff are always welcome to chime in as well with their opinions. So we're just going to get right into it tonight. We've got a bunch of terrorism-related news and updates. So the very first one here is from Khalid. So I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to preface it by saying, so let's say that Sarah Adams and Khalid are wrong about upcoming terror attacks on the United States and Europe. And then he goes through a whole bunch of stuff. Well, why would A, B, and C be in play? So Khalid, I'm going to turn it over to you and have you finish the rest of your own thought there.
Well, this was more of Sarah and I have been fighting this for almost a year now, where people have said this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to happen. Last week, the UK government gave something in the neighborhood of $7 million for mobile mass casualty centers, and they immediately ramped up for something in the neighborhood of 10,000, 15,000 bodies that may fall in the UK. This week, one of the UK emergency medicine bodies put out a survey saying that of the 71 emergency centers, only 15% are ready for mass casualties. All of a sudden, this mass casualty thing became a trend in Europe. Yesterday, France kicked off and said, we are now telling all of our hospitals in France to prepare for a mass casualty event somewhere near the end of February, and be prepared for somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 people being injured or being killed in some kind of an attack. If we're wrong, I mean, it was a question I put at the very bottom. If Sarah and I are wrong, why is Europe all of a sudden getting ready for a mass casualty event? And it's a question that people need to start thinking about, because look, our governments if they don't want to create panic, they're going to play different mind games. They're going to put the information out a different way. If people are paying attention, they're going to catch it, and they're going to realize there's something going on. And we've been talking about Europe now for about a week on our X account, where we posted, the migrant status in every country, and then we connected it with the map in Germany of the knife attacks and showed them the countries around where the predominant knife attacks had happened, what countries were closest, and what the immigration count in those countries were, and said, now watch these next countries. This is where it's going to kick off next. And a lot of people are now starting to realize that, maybe these guys are right, because what they've been talking about, why would the UK government be talking mass casualties? Why is France talking mass casualties? So that was the basis for what we put out, that if we're wrong, okay, you can think we're wrong. You can sit back and sit in your easy chair, drink your coffee, and forget about it. But there is something here, and look at what just happened in Europe. They're not preparing for a mass casualty event. And it's not just because they thought about a mass casualty event, but something gave them a timeline that end of February, something's going to happen.
Well, I had to back up a step further than that, Khalid, and point out that anybody can go to your X, Sarah's X, your website, command11.com, and see all of the steps that you predicted over the course of the past year, and they keep falling in place. One of them, I've never seen anything like this in my 56 years. I have never seen anything where we either have an active shooter or a hoax of an active shooter happening every single day. For those of you who are wondering why I would mention that with regards to Khalid, because Khalid predicted, and so did Sarah, that they would be all types of probing activities. Some of them are probably, pranks. Some of them are not serious. Some of them are just somebody who's messed up on SSRIs or something. But whether they are or not, the bad guys are learning from all this. They're measuring SOPs. They can tell you how long it takes for people to arrive, where the cops actually come from, all of those sort of things. So I would just challenge people who think that Khalid and Sarah are wrong, go back and check this stuff out. So we'll go to the next one here for you, Randy. And this is a pretty good one in the same vein from Sarah. So it says, they tell you the plan, you just have to stop and listen. So I don't know who this guy is.
This is some Afghani. Okay. We can't trace it back. It's in Afghani somewhere, but his tweet is very interesting.
Well, yeah, and I'll make sure that I make it as clear as possible, because you can kind of tell that English isn't their first language. But I'm going to ad lib a little bit so it makes more sense. End world and important places, we have appointed our mujahideen so that you forget September the 11th for something far worse that will happen, God willing. So essentially, this person is saying what Khalid's been saying all along, in that, 9/11 2.0 is going to far eclipse 9/11 1.0. There's been intel around a long time. Like, Randy, what year was it that you got hit with the IED? Was it 2006?
Yep.
That's kind of ironic. I was telling Khalid, we were talking, I had a documentary playing over here from 2006. And the plan that they started to describe of hitting 10 to 15 tier 2 cities from Al-Qaeda, I was like, what? This is not brand new, not brand new ideas or thinking. But, Randy, I just want to get your take on this. As a Green Beret, the severity of 10 to 15 cities being attacked simultaneously.
Well, I mean, you don't even have to be a Green Beret, right, to know how bad that could be. If it plays out as planned, and we take Mumbai as an example, I would hope that over here we'd do a better job, but we've also, and I'm sure Mike Glover will speak of later, and I know I've heard him speak on here about it, about where law enforcement kind of is. It's very possible if it evens 50, they even pull off 50%, right? It's going to set us back quite a bit. I mean, you think about, then you talked about, what happens when that type of attack happens. How many people are going to school and work day 1, day 2, and by day 3, no one's going to work in school. And that would shut down the entire country. And God forbid if we do have some sort of national blackout due to electricity grid going down, because even our own CIA has been warning for about 2 years this was going to happen. It's been stuff. I've seen email over, I assume it's a CIA, but it's stuff. It says the CIA says, hey, there's going to be an attack on the power grid. And it's just like everything else that we've noticed. It doesn't seem anything. We all know it's coming. They know it's coming, but no one's done anything to upgrade or protect the electric grid, or us, either one. So
let's build off of that, Randy. So my comment was, from a Green Beret's perspective, is how do you prepare and defend against 10 to 15 cities being simultaneously attacked across the country like this? I don't think we have the resources. I don't think our law enforcement's not prepared for this. We don't have enough teams that we can parachute in the blink of an eye.
We all know the answer to this, Chris. We all know the answer to this. The fact of the matter is, it's what we've done for years, and it's what this country's always done. It's why we have a National Guard. And, we're sending them out to squell and to crush and to, basically stop all the crimes that are going around in some of these cities that are overrun with it now. We would do the same thing. I mean, literally, if we were doing it to stop it, you might even do all 50 states, honestly. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because but at the very least, we would look at those maps that Khalid's presented, that you've done. Somebody else, professionals, have already done this, Chris. I guarantee you they have. We would know where to deploy these troops, and that's exactly what we would do, because law enforcement isn't ready, and no one else is either. You have to have some soldiers in there to help fight that kind of an element. Certainly the kind of professionals we've seen on the videos. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I watched the closing one earlier, so those dudes are moving like true professionals right there.
Bingo. So what Randy's referring to, if you haven't seen those videos, some of them are propaganda videos. Some of them are videos that Khalid's managed to secure of terrorist training in Afghanistan with our equipment, but they're also our training facilities. And actually, Jeff, it might be good to quickly bring you in on that one before I pivot to the next topic. As far as the importance of what we left behind from a training perspective for these guys, my understanding is we left complete bases that are set up for no purpose other than training guys at a very, very high level.
Yeah. You realize we've been training the Afghanis since right after 9/11. I mean, when we basically took over the country, which didn't take that long, we started training the Northern Alliance because they were our allies. And then when we took the rest of the country, we found, allegedly friendly Pashto groups, and we trained them. And then we found different, Hazara groups that were friendly to us, and we trained them. So yeah, we've been training them for 25 years, and there were in-depth and very, sophisticated training facilities. Some are crude facilities, some are very sophisticated. Yeah. And, we trained them up on our tactics, not all of our tactics. We gave them weapons, not all of our weapons. I mean, most of them were still carrying, AK-47s and AK, 74Ms, that kind of stuff. But short of that, I mean, you can still kill someone with an AK, believe me.
Oh, yeah.
So, they've had 25 years to absorb training. And, not all of them did. Not all of them will cooperate, but I hate to be the ones that don't, because they'll probably kill your family. And there was a lot of green on blue when we were there. So there were people we were training that hated us and turned around and killed Americans.
Yeah. I can't remember who it was. Might have been Randy, might have been Mike Glover, but one of them, somebody said recently, I can look at somebody's feet moving and tell you what level they've been trained at. And that's definitely a good cue to watch. So Khalid, I'm going to go to you with the next one. And the only reason I didn't give it to Jeff is because this is pretty skinny on details here. And I want to make sure that, it was something that you'd read up on. So how Robert Mueller helped Saudi Arabia cover up its role in 9/11 1.0.
Well, if you've been watching the news, you know that the 9/11 victims have filed a case against the Saudi Arabian government in New York City. And Saudi has tried every possible tactic they have to delay this case and get it dismissed. It was about a week ago that the judge said, nope, this case is going forward. You can now depose the government of Saudi Arabia, Saudi intelligence, members of the royal family. It was when that decision was made, and I've been following Paul Sperry for a while. Paul Sperry is an investigative journalist. He's been hammering away on the documents that were presented in court. There is so much evidence of Saudi Arabia being involved in 9/11. This story came out about 2-3 days ago. Mueller, who happens to be the same person who investigated Trump as FBI director, he has now been connected to covering up Saudi Arabia's role. He gave direct orders to members of the FBI at the time and said, no, you don't question the Saudis. You don't question any assets of the Saudis. He gave FBI agents to members of the Saudi diplomatic corps to walk them through airports and put them on planes to get them out of the country, including a member of the bin Laden family. That needs to be clear. A member of the bin Laden family, Robert Mueller, got out of the country right after 9/11. Then there is 24 pages that the FBI gave to the White House and then sanctioned and did not give to Congress, that detailed dot by dot how Saudi Arabia was involved in the 9/11 plot. Now, I am someone, being on this side of the country, on this side of the world, we know the dirty game Saudi plays. We also know the dirty games that Qatar plays. Trusting Saudi Arabia because they've supply oil to the US, they don't give you that much oil to put your national security at risk. And when you have all of the US was shut down and Prince Bandar got on a private plane and got out of the country, that raised a lot of alarm bells. How is he able to fly out of the country when every airport in the US is shut down? And so there's a lot of connections. There's a couple FBI agents who gave depositions in the case saying that Robert Mueller told us that we could not track a woman who had given money and shelter to 2 9/11 terrorists. Robert Mueller himself told the Congress that there was no contact of any of the terrorists. There was no contact with any terrorists in the United States by the people who carried out 9/11, when 14 known terrorists were contacted by the 9/11 attackers, and they had regular relationships with them. This is going to turn into a bombshell. This is going to, all of that conspiracy theory that people had that something's being hidden from us, this is going to blow it up. And I've been watching this very closely because of that.
Well, that's good because we're running out of conspiracy theories. They've all been proven true. We need more conspiracy theories just for that reason alone. Actually, while we're on the same topic, let me pull the next one up and get Jeff's comments on it. And then I've got one related to Iraq for Randy. But Jeff, I'll just read the top portion of this quickly. Members of the House of Saud have long supported terrorism, and the world has turned their back in accepting it. Since the time of the Mujahideen, 79 to 89, Saudi has been funding and spreading Wahhabi ideology and terrorism across the globe. So this stuff was clearly happening while you were active duty CIA.
Oh, yeah.
You also were in the Middle East. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, the Saudis, the Saudi royal family in particular, practices a very, very, what's the pleasant word for it, conservative version of Islam called Wahhabism. Yeah. Women have to wear abayas, they can't drive, they can't leave the house without a male family member with them, and on and on and on. And the Saudis, for all their attempts, or I should say, lip service about modernizing their society, yeah, they built all these universities, and it was enrolled all these students. But you got to realize in the early 90s or mid 90s, something like 68 or 60 or 70% of all students enrolled in Saudi universities were studying theology. They were studying Islam. They weren't studying engineering. They weren't studying literature. They weren't learning how to be social workers, nothing like that. They were all studying to become imams.
Yep.
And so you've got a country supported by oil wealth that is paying its people to become religious fanatics, essentially. And the only thing that's keeping the country actually functioning are the foreign guest workers. The Americans, the Pakistanis, the Indians, the Indonesians, the Filipinos. They're the ones that are actually doing the real work. And, the joke is, if you hired a job and they says, got to hire a Saudi, you'd hire a Saudi. And then you have to hire a tea boy, because he's got to have a tea boy. He can't get his own tea. And then you have to hire an Indian to actually do the job that the Saudi was hired to do. Yeah. And that's why their cost of doing business is through the roof. But they don't do anything themselves. And even the Egyptians look down on them, because the Egyptians, they have this history of literature and engineering, and goes back thousands of years. And they looked down on the Saudis, and they said, if it wasn't for oil, they'd be nobody. He says, these guys are goat herders, 2 generations ago. They were Bedouin goat herders, says, and now they think they own the world. And it's just because, the British found oil under them. But yeah, I have no love for the Saudis.
So on this topic last night, we were discussing some of these Middle Eastern countries, and somebody had said at some point in time, not last night, but it came up in the conversation again last night, that all of these countries that are being mentioned, Saudi Arabia included, will smile to your face while they're stabbing you in the back. And I was just curious your perception, since you've traveled there, worked there, and gathered intel.
And part of it's their culture, in that it's okay to lie to an infidel. Yeah, infidels don't count. You may not lie to your fellow Arab brother, but it's okay to lie to an American, to a European, because they're not of the book. Therefore, they're not almost like not real people. And when for the Saudis and a lot of the Gulf Arabs, you can still be a Muslim, but if you're not a Gulf Arab Muslim, they don't care. They treat, God, you could recruit an Indian Arab working for Saudi Arabia by just saying, hey, you want to screw over the Saudis? And the guy's, what do I got to do? Okay, I need this, this, and this. Deal. Because they treat them like crap. They wouldn't even, I knew one guy, it says, he was so frustrated. He says they wouldn't even they wouldn't play soccer with them, because, they're beneath us. We won't play soccer with them.
Interesting.
They're doing your job for you, but you won't play soccer with them.
Well, since we've opened this topic up, I'm curious what your thoughts are on how our current administration should be, treating Saudi Arabia. How should we handle Saudi Arabia? Every time I've seen Trump there, he's shaking hands. Everybody's all smiley. Didn't he put his hands on a Saudi Arabian prince or something, which is strictly forbidden in his first term or something like that? And
yeah, he may have. Trump plays nice with everyone, and I understand his logic. If you're going to negotiate, the person has to be willing to talk to you. That's why he went to North Korea. You can't negotiate with someone if you're not willing to talk to them. That's what negotiation is. And that's why he talks to Putin. If Putin screws him over, Trump will screw him back. But he is not one of these who just goes in from the start and says, I'm never going to talk to that person ever again. Well, if you want to have a peace treaty, you got to talk to both sides. But he's, I think he looks at, I don't know the man's thoughts, obviously, but I think a lot of people in this administration look at the Saudis as kind of a necessary evil. They're looking at them as a counter to Iran. Iran's got a lot more people. They've got 60, 80 million people, a lot of young people. They're more educated than the Saudis are, because Iranians study, engineering and finance and stuff. Iran would be a powerhouse if they actually had a government that wasn't living in the dark ages.
Yep.
They were more advanced in 1979 than they are now, especially socially.
Yeah, that's right. And there's no love lost, just cyclically, but there's no love lost between the Iranians and the Saudi Arabians.
Different ethnicities. You have Persians versus Arabs. You have Shia versus Sunni. And Iran has been a power for millennia. You go back to Xerxes, and Thermopylae, and invading Greece at 1000 BC. Saudi Arabia wasn't even really a country until like the 1930s, 40s, 50s.
47.
Saud, the old man, he basically united a bunch of nomadic tribes.
I'm going to pull you in just a second, Khalid. But all I wanted to add is that several years ago, it's ironic, Mike Sterling and I were discussing this on the phone yesterday, when we sounded the alarm over drones flying into NFL stadiums. Here's a number for people that I haven't shared recently. There were over 2,400 drone intrusions on NFL stadiums last year during the 2024 season. And for almost 3 years now, we've been saying this is a serious threat. You take the drone swarm software, which at the time when it was initially released, one operator could operate 5,000 drones essentially for light shows, right? The current version, it's open source software. One operator can technically control up to 15,000 drones. But in 2019, a great example of this is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard used that software and 24 drones, flew them into Saudi Arabia, hit their biggest oil production facility, and in 20 minutes knocked out 5% of the world's oil supply and carried on back to Iran. So it's not something that the terrorists don't know about. They're proficient with it. And, you know, we haven't spoke with regards to drones as far as 9/11 2.0 is concerned, because there hasn't been very specific intel like Khalid and Sarah have gathered. But it would not surprise me at some point in time. Let me let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So we put together this 144 series called The Long War. So the first 12 was the road to 9/11 2.0. This one here is prepping and survival before, during, and after 9/11 2.0. And it goes on for 10 more seasons, essentially, with 12 episodes each. And our crystal ball basically says when this stuff goes down, we will be forever altered. But unlike 9/11 1.0, we're not going to have this extended period of peace afterwards. The attacks are not going to end. We may kick it off with 9/11 2.0 on a big basis, but then it's not going to be unusual for attacks to happen on a frequent basis. And that's kind of the future we're looking at. And that's, in my opinion, that's where the drones come into play. Khalid, I'll get your thoughts on Saudi Arabia drones, and I want to get to Randy on the stuff that's been going on in Iraq.
I just wanted to add a couple of things. If Iran had not seen the Islamic Revolution with Khomeini, Iran would be phenomenal today. It's the same thing with Afghanistan. If New Delhi and Moscow had not killed King Zahir, Afghanistan would be a fantastic unified country because they were moving forward. The problem is that everyone wants to play chess games in the Middle East, and you don't realize how hostile the Middle East is towards its own people. It's not the rest of the world. They're hostile against their own people first. And when you move out of the Middle East, when you've got someone in power like the Taliban that says, no, don't fight here, fight there. And all of a sudden they're redirected to another target. And that's the only thing I wanted to add, because when you talk about the Middle East, that is a powder keg. It is a powder keg ready to explode, because you've got 98% of the wealth is with 2% of the population, and everyone else is poor. And at some point, if you were to remove the monarchies in the Middle East, you would see uprisings that you would not believe. Arab Spring would look like nothing compared to the kind of uprisings you see. I've worked in Dubai for 8 years. They give you everything, but they will not shake your hand. You're a level below them because you're not Arab. You're not from the Gulf. You're not one of us. So you're not clean. And that's something like Jeff was saying. I mean, it's really weird when you go to the Middle East and you go, what the hell is wrong with you?
I've seen it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Khalid. Sorry, did you want to add something, Jeff?
Well, no, I mean, just echoing what Khalid said, it's for someone who's grown up in the West or is exposed to the West, it's really bizarre. We have friends, and our friends can be white, they can be black, they can be male, they can be female. We don't care. Our friends are friends are friends. It's like on a football team. You don't care what color the guy is. He's blocking for you, so he's your best friend when he's blocking for you. They don't have that mindset at all.
Interesting.
there. It's well, I almost think it goes back, especially for the Saudis, back to the whole tribal thing.
Yeah.
And they keep track of what tribe they came from. And it's in their name and it's in their histories. And boy, they know.
I'm just going to throw this out there, though. I think a lot of people in America, including us, don't realize how not unified other countries are. And that includes Western countries as well. When I was doing stuff, working at Sun, and I was delivering training, across the continent, but flew from one side of Canada to the other, everybody in Canada, like the Western Canadians, they hate the people on the other side of the Rockies. They hate the people in Central Canada. They hate the people in Ontario. The people in Ontario hate everybody out west. They hate the French. The French hate everybody. Completely disjointed. Whereas, we don't agree with communist states like California and stuff, but at the end of the day, 9/11 1.0 is a good example of us coming together. So, Randy, apologies for taking time to get to you. Before I bring up the stuff on Iraq, I want to get your thoughts now that I opened the topic of drones up a little bit, because it's not something that we've discussed recently, but we have discussed at length in the past. And I'm 100% sure that we have a whole bunch of new people in our audience who've never heard us talk about the drone threat and what it looks like. So maybe walk us through the stuff we've discussed in the past as far as what does a drone attack look like on an open air facility? Doesn't even have to be NFL. What's the high school stadium near you on the north side of DFW that's got seating for 100,000?
You're talking about Allen, Texas.
That's it, right?
$60 million facility is what they play in. $60 million
for a high school.
For a high school football field stadium.
So there's a reason I mentioned that. Think of one of these attacks, though, happening at a high school football game on a Friday night with 100,000 people there.
Well,
take it with friends.
The thing about it is, drones are very easy, right? It's an easy application, man. They're not even that expensive anymore, really. Now you can get some expensive ones depending on what you need to do, but basically you don't really have to have this big sophisticated system to do it, and they've been around long enough now. A lot of people have used them, and if somebody flew in over a stadium and dropped, whether it be the sarin gas, heck, anything, it'd be fentanyl. Just think of anything that would be deadly in a split second, and you dumped it into the open air right there, in any Friday night football game, or God forbid, as you talked about the NFL stadiums, talking about the small ones are 60,000 people. You're talking about something we've never seen, not only in this country, we definitely haven't seen it in this country, but there's nothing seen like that in the world yet, as far as we know, right? That would make history in a very horrific way.
To say the least. So actually, okay, go ahead, Jeff, and then I have a specific question.
It doesn't even have to be lethal. If someone
sick.
Yeah, chili powder, anything that people got a reaction to, pepper spray, there would be panic.
Yeah.
And in the panic, people would get trampled. And you would have all sorts of people wounded, probably some killed, from something that's not even lethal.
Yep.
Oh, sure. 60,000, you guarantee people are going to get trampled and killed in that trying to exit.
Absolutely.
Yep.
100%. And I want to get Clede to weigh in on this too now that we're down this road, because it is something we haven't discussed recently. But when Mike Sterling and I did our initial research, here's the deal. There are 1,400 analogs of fentanyl. We have signatures on 200 analogs. There are certain types of fentanyl, and one of which we're hearing a fair bit with regards to in America now, which is called carfentanil. There's another one that's remifentanil. These, analogs of fentanyl are 100 times more deadly than the base analog of fentanyl is, right? So 2002, 2003, Chechen rebels storm a theater, downtown Moscow. They take 900 plus hostages. FSB does not operate like our law enforcement. So they don't tell anybody, but they pump aerosolized carfentanil through the HVAC system, killed a whole bunch of people that could have been saved with Narcan. And it didn't even come out until many years later. Now imagine the fact that you can buy, like Randy said, you can buy really decent drones with a really decent payload. And you go into an NFL stadium and you start dropping aerosolized fentanyl at a low altitude, you get everything they describe plus the deaths. Now, sarin's really not used in warfare for a very specific reason. As soon as it hits air, it vaporizes, and when it vaporizes, it loses lethality quickly. Now, if you put sarin into an HVAC system, that's a different story. But Khalid, I'm really curious because we haven't had this conversation. The drone threat is a big deal, especially considering, for those of you who don't know this, the day before Donald Trump was sworn in, inaugurated the second time, the Chinese drone company, DJI, which owns basically 90% of the world, their drones are forbidden to be used by American government agencies, but 60% of our agencies still use them. The day before Trump's inaugurated, you cannot make a DJI drone take off if there's an update available for it. You have to apply the update before it'll allow you to launch that drone. They removed all the geofencing 24 hours before Trump was sworn into office. What that means is all of the no-fly zones where if you tried to approach them with a DJI drone in the past, it just wouldn't go past a certain point, all gone. So that means whether somebody does it intentionally or unintentionally, they fly over restricted airspace. All of that intel goes back to DJI, which is a branch of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Bad stuff. So this drone stuff gets me fired up. I'm surprised my watch isn't going up, but go ahead, Clete.
If you remember, Chris, I sent you a video a while back of the TTP using drones here in Pakistan. We first saw drones appear on the battlefield in 2022. And they were being tested in Afghanistan. And how do we fly them? How do we operate them? We saw the TTP videos of them launching the drone and trying to figure out how to fly. It would go this way and this way and this way. They couldn't get it to work. And once they got stabilized, they started using it against the Pakistani military. More importantly, instead of using it against the Pakistani military, they started using it against the Pakistani civilians in the tribal district. And they would drop a mortar or a munition from a drone and drop it onto a house or onto a security checkpost, and boom, the checkpost would be gone. It created another level of propaganda they could use, that Pakistan's military has drones, we use drones, and we were public about the fact that we have drones and we use them against the terrorists. So what they would do is they drop a munition from the top, and they turn around and go, the Pakistani army did it. Look, they killed their own citizens, and they run propaganda off of it. What that means, and these drones are now being used in Syria as well. So you had your test ground in Pakistan, you figured out how to use them, you figured out how you could weaponize them, you move them to Syria, they're being used in the battlefield in Syria now. Those same drones can be used inside the US because they're such simple drones. They're not even using high-tech drones. They're using the simple drones that you and I can buy in any shopping center. And they've fitted them out in such a way that they can drop a munition, they can drop a chemical from the top. They can do anything to create havoc and mayhem. More importantly, they can use it for surveillance during an attack. So while you are in attack, you've got surveillance drones up on top watching movement. Where is somebody coming from? And that information is reported back to the fighter on ground, that you've got a team coming in from this side, you've got a team coming in from this side. You have, again, just like with night vision goggles, with thermal, the terrorists now have a battlefield advantage because they have figured out how to use technology against the people that created the technology.
Check this out.
Yeah,
So I was off by a year.
This is $20.
Go ahead, Jeff.
$20.
Yeah.
Temu special. Check this out. The NFL reported 2,845 drone intrusions in a restricted airspace around stadiums during the 2023 season, up from 2,537 in 2022. An alarming increase. I mean, it's a deal, people. So I wanted to move on to this next one here, and I'll bring you up in just a second, Randy. So Iraqi National Intelligence Service announced the arrest of a major ISIS financing network responsible for smuggling militants across countries. The arrests were carried out in several West African countries. The cell was allegedly planning attacks against European countries and Iraqi interests abroad. Just because you served in Iraq, and so you have familiarity with it there. Everything that I've read in recent times, Randy, said that the country is extremely fragile. Like it's on the point of collapsing and falling back into, say, ISIS's hands or something to that effect. just curious about your thoughts. They seem to be taking offensive actions now. It's not defensive. You know, they're not just trying to protect their own. They're going after other areas again.
Well, here's reality. They you know, who do you think's been running the country? You know what I mean? I guarantee you they haven't had a real government since we took down Saddam. And, you know, while we were there, there was a somewhat of a structure, we'll call it, right? And that's really all you can call it. Because just like I've told you before and on this panel several times, there was a lot of chaos going on, right? And then when the insurgency kicked in full speed, you know, the Americans were in camps, right? And so in the countryside, these people were still moving around. There were still a bunch of dangerous elements out there. It's why people got hit with IEDs and everything else. You know what I mean? And none of that could be stopped. And, you know, so I have no doubt there's a criminal element, you know, kind of running the place. And it's probably not just, it's probably fractured off. I mean, all we did was really destabilize that country at this point in time. You know, you say 20 years later, 23 years later, I don't know what else you could call it, because, you know, I will say right now, you know, Saddam was not a good guy, and that was a terrible and a brutal regime, and somebody should have done something about it. But it was just like the battle plan, really. I don't know, or it's what we're saying all along. They're just trying to destabilize pretty much every segment on the globe, so a greater plan can be implemented. I mean, you know,
yeah,
that's what I think it is, because you think about it, why else would you do that? And right now, then we just pulled out and left them. What do you think's going to happen when we're not there anymore? Good guys are not going to take over. It's just a fact. Those guys get killed long before they can make it to the show.
Well, as you're saying this, Randy, I'm thinking to myself, Libya and Gaddafi was a piece of crap, just like Saddam. But he even specifically said, if you take me out and you think things are bad now, wait to see what happens after you take me out. What'd we do? We took him out. We exited.
So what I've determined is these guys were nothing but just like some of our worst gangs in the country, right? The guy that's the leader has to be a badass, because he's having to keep a bunch of badasses in line. Well, when you take that guy out, somebody's going to try to take over. The problem is there hasn't been one element, you know, and unfortunately it's more of it doesn't surprise me because of what was going on in Iraq to begin with. You know what I mean? Put this into back in 2006.
Put this into your thought process, Randy, because you were there. You served there. My brother-in-law was a Seminole County sheriff for 30 years, but during that time, they let him go for 12 years to the Navy, and he was Navy intel, and he ran the desk for Bayron, and he barely ever says a word about it because it's highly sensitive information. And when I first asked him, like years ago, what exactly he was doing, he said, my job is to track all of the most dangerous weapons in that area and make sure that the least of all the shitbags have those weapons in their hands.
That's right.
So they're going to be in the hands of bad guys, but they're the least of the bad guys, sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean,
you know, but it worked. We maintained, at least we maintained some element of order, but as soon as we took Gaddafi and Hussein out, the wheels came off, right?
When law enforcement, there's no law enforcement and no government structure, people are going to go wild. And then the criminal element comes out. Like I said, the people that have a little bit of power and money, that have guns and ammo and men, more importantly, they already have a network. Those people come out and take charge of the streets real quick, like. And so that's just human nature. It's what we've always done. And just because we've moved so far in society and technology wise, we're no different than, you know, when we didn't have all this technology.
Let's put a fine point on this, Randy. This is not you reading books and positing that this happens.
No,
you witnessed this happen when Baghdad went down.
I literally did. You know, there was a big looting period, you know, and then as soon as the looting stopped, or we stopped it 3 days later, within that day and within a day or two, the criminal element already was coming out, and there were roadblocks. They would have their own checkpoint. No joke. These guys would be armed with AKs. They would shake everybody down, and they would steal, rape, kill, and everything else in those checkpoints, and force their will upon everybody. And that's just what's going to happen when there's lawlessness. That's what happens.
I appreciate that, Randy. I especially appreciate, I mean, I appreciate your service to our country, but I appreciate the firsthand perspective. It's one thing for somebody like me to read about it and talk to people about it. It's a whole other thing for somebody like you. You lived it. You were right there. Jeff, I want to bring you in just quickly before we move on to the next one, which Khalid, the next one will go is Sarah's comments on the GWAT generation. But Jeff, I want to hear your thoughts on Gaddafi, Libya, Hussein, Iraq, and how we seem to be really good at regime change, but we really suck bad at what comes after regime change.
Well, we assume that everybody over there is like us. They have no democratic tradition in Libya, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia. These are not democracies or representative republics. The reason they have strongman leaders is because someone has to keep a lid on it, and you need a strongman to do that. You had Assad in Syria 4 years. You had Saddam in Iraq 4 years. You had the Ayatollahs in Iran have done it for years. Now, Iran, I think, is a little different. If any country could develop into a Western type culture in that immediate region, I would say it's Iran. But you know, if there's a reason why King Abdullah of Jordan is a direct descendant of the Hashemite kings, because they were the ones that could keep the lid on things. And there was something to be said in the old days when we weren't trying to turn everybody into a democracy. It was, yeah, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. And yeah, there's a time when you got to realize, okay, he is the lesser of 10 evils. He's still evil, but he's the lesser of the 10 evils, and we can work with him. He's not going to slaughter his people in the streets. But if you think it's going to be all goodness and light and you're going to be singing Christmas carols, it ain't happening. And it never will.
Let's open up a rabbit hole here. I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this. One of the things that Gaddafi said is he said to the European leaders, he said, if you take me out, you will be flooded with people coming from Africa. How did he know that? How did he come up with that prediction? Because it was right on the money, clearly.
Because he was stopping them.
Yep.
You know, the only reason they weren't going through Libya to hit Europe is because he didn't want them in Libya in the first place. And if he's gone, it'd be like Canada. If we open up the border with Mexico and everybody from South America, what's to keep them from going to Canada? Absolutely nothing.
Right.
But they didn't want to go to Canada; it's too damn cold. But yeah, he knew it because he was the one who kept a lid on it. And the reason, and I always said that the reason Iraq invaded Kuwait when it did is because the Soviet Union had collapsed, and Saddam was their attack dog. And had that happened when the Soviets were still in power, we could have called him up on the little red hotline and said, "Hey, your dog, he's causing trouble. Yank on your dog's leash." And they could have said, "Yeah, it's not good for the world." And they could have yanked his leash and shut him down. But he was a mad dog with no master.
Yep.
And so there was no one to tell him no.
And he was broke at the time, wasn't he? I mean,
he was broke. He owed Kuwait billions because they had bankrolled his war against Iran. And now they're saying, "Okay, we want our money back." And he said, "I can't pay you, so I'll just take you over." Yeah. But there was no one to tell him no. And that's just my theory. But I think the Russians, if the Soviets had been in power, they could have said, "Yeah, don't do that. It's not good for the world."
Yeah. I knew you'd have great perspective on that. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. That's one of the best rabbit holes we've gone down recently.
Well, before we cap that off, I just wanted to say that, Chris, what we have to realize when you mentioned about the democracy, a lot of those cultures over there don't really want a democracy. Certainly all the leadership, none of them want a democracy. So, we really should realize that, because going over and thinking we're going to turn Iraq into a democracy when they really don't know what that means, and none of the countries around them want that either. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, valid observation for sure. So next one up from our friend Sarah Adams. Too many in the GWAT generation stay silent on this when the truth is he should be banned from U.S. soil. Believing the fight against terrorists is over is nothing but a fool's game. So that she's referring to Julani in Syria, who's going to be here September 25th, which just blows me away. This is a guy who was originally part of Al-Qaeda, then splintered off one of the first ISIS factions, hardcore anti-American terrorist, celebrated 9/11 1.0, and now they've trimmed his beard, put him in a three-piece suit, and our ambassador, Tom Barrack, says, no, he's aligned with us. Sebastian Gorka, he's aligned with us. This guy's a friend of ours. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now he's coming to New York to speak. I'm just going to turn it over to you, Khalid, because this is your wheelhouse, and my watch is now going off, officially going off, telling me I have an abnormally high heart rate. So
look, I'm gonna mix two things. The democracy you guys were talking about first. When you look at a country like Pakistan, the U.S. has had better relations with the military than it's had with the democratically elected government, for the simple reason that they understand the military can control Pakistan. They can control the troublemakers in Pakistan. So it's better to stay close with the military, and whoever comes into power, throw a little money at them and shut them up and keep them out of the way and let the military do what they need to do. When we switch over to Julani was part of ISIS in Iraq. He was a prolific assassin. He was a prolific killer of U.S. forces. And the reason I'm laying this out, because I want you to understand how stupid Tom Barrack sounds when he talks about being Julani. This guy was so good in Iraq against U.S. forces that they promoted him to Syria and said, go take over Syria, go run there. He took the oath. He took the oath with Al-Qaeda and said, okay, now I'm Al-Qaeda. And did all the Al-Qaeda thing. He brought in Al-Nusra Front. On top of Al-Nusra Front, he brought Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is now the current government, the current regime that's in power. Then you sent him to the UK, got him a nice haircut, sent him to Supercuts and got him a great haircut, bought him a bunch of suits on Savile Row, and taught him how to talk not in a non-jihadi language. And what was fantastic, there was an interview done, and we posted the video of this a few times, where someone asked him, he said, can you explain to us what your feeling was when 9/11 happened? And that little smirk that came across his face, he goes, well, every Muslim in the world was very happy when 9/11 happened. And we went, this is the leader of Syria? We're trusting this guy to run Syria? Right now, they are going along and marking Christian homes, Al-Wati homes, with X's, just like they did in Iraq. That's exactly what ISIS did in Iraq before they went and started to slaughter and massacre them. What happened with the Druze about a month and a half ago, where they killed 2,000 in 1 week, that was under Julani's government with his own military involved. How in the world are you saying that we can trust this guy and that his objectives align with ours? I have repeatedly said this on X, that Khalilzad, Gorka, and Barrack must be checked to see if they have taken an oath of allegiance with Al-Qaeda or Islamic or ISIS, because nobody in the U.S. diplomatic corps talks like this about a terrorist.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Khalid. I mean, I would add to this just before we wrap up the first half of tonight's podcast, that my personal opinion, and this is from conversations with people at fairly high levels, is that Trump is hell-bent determined to get a Nobel Peace Prize because Barack Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize. And if he can get 2 peace prizes, that's even better than 1 peace prize. And so there's a fair bit of chatter. I have a very close friend of mine who works in the White House 1 week on messaging, and then he goes to Mar-a-Lago the following week and does work there. He's got like 40 people on his team, extremely well plugged in. And he said they're basically being told downplay all of these, fights, because Trump doesn't want any wars, doesn't want any attacks. He wants to go down as the greatest peace president in all time. Now, he's human like the rest of us. He has faults. I love Donald Trump. I think he's the best choice, but that doesn't mean he's infallible. Although I will give him credit I've been bitching about this for what 4.5 years about Project Warp Speed, and that he got duped on Project Warp Speed. And what's happening now? We have the whole thing's being turned upside down thanks to RFK Jr., which, by the way, I'm going to throw this out there, and I hate to say this. My crystal ball says no later than the end of this year, you're going to see an assassination attempt on RFK Jr. And let's hope it's not successful. But that's another topic. So quickly want to share one thing before we go to our last article and end up in with Mike Glover. So survivaldispatch.news. If we're broadcasting live, which we do 6 nights of the week at 7 p.m., or actually we go 5 nights, and I forgot we changed our schedule up a bit. Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, you'll see the embedded video at the top. But if you go any other time, you'll see our sit rep for that particular day. If you go into that sit rep, you'll see that there's a whole article that corresponds with this episode, with today's episode. Many times we have downloadable assets here. We've got additional links, and this is free. It doesn't cost anything for these sit reps. You also get our watch guide, which has links to everything. And you get some additional stuff like the JJ Morse instructional videos, which are pure gold. But if you sign up for $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, you get 2.5 months for free. In addition to getting the sit rep, at the end of each sit rep, for those of you who like to study, you get all of the links that we used in our research for this episode, as well as the sit rep, the article above it. You get an invite to our super crazy busy Signal chat, which the volume of intel that goes through there is off the chain. A busy day, there's 3,000 messages go through that. If you sign up, just send your phone number to support@survivaldispatch.com. We'll get you an invite. Make sure you have Signal installed. Make sure you haven't hidden your number before you email us. You also get all 37 of our Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines. There's the cover. So you get the digital editions. They are $9.99 a piece. So you essentially get $370 worth of the e-magazines for free. You get early access to our instructional videos. It's a heck of a good deal if you're worried about, keeping yourself and your family safe. So I'm going to raise everybody's blood pressure before they leave today. And we're going to venture into the politically incorrect territory. Our good friend, my brother, JJ Carroll here, who says we need to have a very frank and honest discussion that the transgender community needs to be pushed into mental institutions and cared for, not celebrated, not clapped at as we're like stupid seals as we're watching our demise. Quick number for y'all, if you haven't heard me say this before. Early 1950s, we had 550,000 inpatient care beds in psychiatric institutions across the country. Today, we have less than 40,000. For the past few years, I've been saying MAGA means make asylums great again. Let's hear what our brother JJ Carroll has to say about this. Then everybody will have a chance to weigh in on it before we bring Mike on stage. And if you have a watch like mine that tells you your heart rate's crazy high, turn it off right now.
Can we have, or maybe the question is, when can we have this very, very frank and honest discussion that the transgender community are freaks? The transgender community are mentally insane. The transgender community needs to be pushed into mental institutions and cared for, not celebrated, not clapped at as we're like stupid seals as we're watching our demise. You look at the last, I think it was like 7 or 8 school shootings, all trans, all mental patients on some high level narcotics. You won't say it out loud that transgender freaks are freaks of nature. Their bodies have been destroyed. Their minds are scrambled eggs, and they just lash out. And this is part of the unintended consequences of destroying young people's bodies. This is just one of them. I mean, let's follow the left's logic. This is just, if he kills a couple kids and he kills a couple people, well, as long as that we reaffirm that he is a sick, demented freak, it's all good.
God bless JJ Carroll. So Jeff and Randy, I'll give you all a chance to speak to it. And then Mike's joined us now. We're going to get into the escape and evasion stuff right away after that. So Jeff, we'll go to you first. You're on mute, Jeff.
yeah, I'll cut out when this is done, but he's absolutely right. I mean, if you are a person, it's like every cell of your body is coded male, but your brain thinks you're female. It's not a problem with your body, it's a problem with your brain. And if someone thinks they're a horse, we don't treat them like a horse. We don't put a saddle on them and ride them. A guy who thinks he's a woman is delusional. And forever it was a mental illness. Even the psychiatrists agreed to that until, 10 years ago, when they decided, okay, we'll say you're sane after all. No, you're not. You're still nuts.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. Randy, final word to you on this.
Well, then you look at all the medications, right? All those, every one of them, all those mental, I don't care what it is, what I've said all along on these pharmaceuticals, anything you see about depression or mental issues or any of that kind of stuff, even the stuff the VA pushes to veterans, all of it have the same side effect if you want to commit suicide. How much you want to bet some of those actually also have the other one that people don't want to talk about, which is homicidal tendencies. I would bet money on that. I mean, I don't have the proof of it, but I saw somewhere recently that may be the case, and with some other medications. So you have to realize that too. Not only have they now fractured whatever soul and mind this person had, now they put them on these psychomeds, and what do you think's going to happen? I mean, and then you find a way to get a gun in their hands. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, it's not hard to predict at all. So, Jeff, Randy, appreciate your time. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Mike, good to see you. Appreciate you joining us. So, talk to you all tomorrow night. All right, so here we go. So Mike's got a limited amount of time tonight, so I'm going to set the stage really, really quickly and try turn the bulk of this over to him and Khalid as far as the tactics are concerned. So the main topic is urban evasion and extraction tactics. Pardon me. You're moving through hostile areas, lockdown environments, mall shootings, hospital attacks. And Mike's going to give us guidance, Khalid as well, on how to escape, avoid kill zones, even identify kill zones, as well as the follow-up ambush sites, because all of these complex coordinated attacks, people, at least from what I've seen in Mumbai and Paris in particular, like, phew, thank God it's over. And it ain't over. The fat lady's not singing and it keeps on going. So let me just set the stage here. Obviously, evasion, matters, because if you stay on the X, Mike will tell you nothing good comes out of that. And again, we're speaking in terms of 9/11 2.0. So when I say setting the stage, imagine 10 to 15 tier 2 American cities, population 100 to 500,000, that have one tier 1 trauma center. Guess what? There's only 16 of them, and one of them's Honolulu. So the 15 cities are relatively easy to identify that fit that criteria. Now imagine small ISIS cells going and attacking schools, malls, office buildings. Imagine them attacking with everything from whether it be guns, bombs, or putting sarin capsules in the HVAC systems with a timer and then setting it off a few minutes later, and then standing outside the doors when people start to, they smell the gas and they start having effects from it. They go out the doors and they get mowed down. And now while this is happening, all your first responders have gone to that. Now Al-Qaeda goes to the airport, where they already have people on the inside, as we know. We just caught 2 of them here in South Florida, and they hijack several planes on the ground, not in the air, on the ground. And then when they go airborne, and this could happen outside the US, by the way, simultaneously, and the planes come into our airspace and they explode over the country. The death toll is not as high as hitting the World Trade Centers, but how on God's green earth did they get a bomb on a plane become such a big issue that you can think of air travel being shut down, completely shut down. So that's the scenario that we're looking at here. So let's go into the very first moments, Mike. It's complete chaos. People are in that initial state of shock. They're confused, for lack of a better term. Explain the concept of the OODA loop and how people get back into a functional OODA loop so that they can identify things. Is that gunfire? Is it fireworks? Is that a bomb, or is that electrical failure? Is this a panic, or is this an actual threat? And then move through all those initial steps that you would take someone through, Mike. Oh, and hold on a second here. There we go. I had to get you front and center. I'm going to turn over to you, Mike, for those initial, call it the first few minutes.
Mike's got no volume. There you go.
I got it.
Oh,
You're good,
just
Mike.
for initial context on the subject matter, I've been to every survival school in the military. I've been to peacetime high-risk C, which is Green Berets and aviators behind enemy lines survival school. I've been to JSOC's cover course called OCPC, official cover course. I've been to peacetime detention, which is what happens when you get rolled up in most places. Like I technically have been rolled up in Saudi Arabia, and you get pulled into secondary for screening. And I think most significantly, I've been to the CIA's version of this, which is called ATROC, High Risk Operations Course. One of the best courses I've ever been to. And so that's a snapshot into my background in this context. I will say that I've simplified the OODA loop slightly because it can be confusing. I just turned it into an acronym called OPS, Observe, Prepare, Survive. It's very simple. And I like to keep things super simple, especially under stress. So the first thing you need to do is observe the situation that's happening in front of you. And to do that, you would need to have your senses. When an immediate attack happens, most people don't have their senses because they're blasted into this fight or flight. You get the adrenaline, you get that norepinephrine, you're going to get cortisol, elevated states of arousal. It's called being hyper aroused. And there's a significant shift called hypoarousal that can shut you down. So much so that you freeze in place. Not to be confused with fight, flight, or freeze. This is a hypoarousal where you essentially shut down in what's called a faint state. We see it in the animal kingdom when there's a predator about to attack its prey. In that last-ditch effort of survival, there's a mechanism in being hypo-aroused and stimulated where the prey pretends like it's dead. Now some people think it's because in survival in the natural world, you don't want to eat something that's tainted with virus, with bacteria. And so the predator backs off. I would err on the side of caution of this because if you understand this and you're cognitive, that's not going to happen to you. There is the advantages of remaining still to get into the moment. And as a reminder, we talked about this before, all of this is a neurological response as a mobility tactic for survival in the human body. The problem is that's primitive and primal survival tactics. That's like saber-toothed tiger stuff. The difference is we need to be able to be cognitive and not only keep our wits about us, but dial 911, communicate what's going on to dispatch so they disseminate the information, and especially make critical decisions. So the best thing you do is breathe, assess the situation by observing what's going around you, prepare for the situation at the same moment while you're moving, right? You could think and walk. You could chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. You need to be moving. The X is the crisis site. Wherever that attack took place, your immediate response potentially is moving to cover, but you need to seek as much distance, time, and as many obstacles as you can in between the threat and where your current location or your family's locations is at. And then finally, observe, prepare, survive. Just because you get beyond the realm of the immediate danger doesn't mean you survived, right? A lot of people don't understand, like, all of this has to do with like what's happening on the X, but what happens when you get in your car? If you didn't pre-plan, if you didn't listen and take heed to the advice that we're giving you, well, you're probably not going to have the vehicle that's prepared. You're not going to have the capacity and think about equipment that you're going to take on person. Lastly, one of the most significant things I learned, and I didn't mention this, I also was in JSOC's covert communications class, which is very classified. I only mention it that way, but a specific means of communicating. And in ATROC, what I learned, high risk operations course, is that everything on your person matters, especially when shit hits the fan, because your immediate action of the things that you do to get out of harm's way, that's fine. But what happens after that? In ATROC, we survived out of a Ziploc bag full of equipment that we would have on our person. And the idea is if you're a case officer operating wherever in the world, it fell apart, could you survive with what's on your person? And that's the mindset that you have to be in. Are you going to survive with what's on your person? The vehicle is an extension of your rucksack, meaning increased capability because of the capacity. And then your house is a bed down location for you to reinforce your security.
Christian, I'm mute, Chris.
So apologies, I did it to myself. Before you go, Khalid, I just want to mention something really quickly. My wife's mother was a young teenager in Germany during World War II. And one of the ways that she survived, because of course the Russians, as they were coming in from the east, were raping all of these young women, is she actually pretended that she was dead, buried amongst other dead bodies. And, sometimes they come along and poke them with their rifle, but she spent a lot of time using that as a tactic. And then I don't remember the entire story, but when my wife was younger, they had gone to a funeral. They were at a cemetery to bury a family member. The sun was setting and they were fixing to leave. And then the kids were like, man, this is a really spooky place at night. And she started laughing and she said, I used to sleep in cemeteries because it's not the dead people that you have to worry about. So pretty crazy from a war perspective. So Khalid, I'll just get your quick thoughts on, what Mike touched on as far as these first few initial minutes are before we move on.
Well, the problem is most people, when they hear gunshots, when they hear something go off, they're going to start running. And that's the worst thing you can do, because once you start running, you become an open target. It's that situational awareness where you don't figure out where the conflict is coming from, where the threat is coming from, and you end up running right into the threat. Breathe, like Mike was saying, look, you got to take that breath and you got to stay in your head, because as long as you stay in your head, you're thinking, you're operating from a cognitive level. That means you're looking around, you're using your auditory, you're listening for where the noises are coming from, so you're not going in that direction. I understand everybody wants to get off the X as quickly as possible. I mean, that's the basic human mentality, to get to safety as quickly as possible. But to get to safety, you need to understand what's going on around you. You need a 360 understanding of what's happening. And having been in situations like this, you have got to calm yourself down first. If you let your adrenaline get high, it's game over. You're going to walk right into a gunman's scope. You're going to walk right into a suicide bomber, because we know that because the goal is mass casualties, all of these attackers are going to have suicide vests on them, and they're going to have dead man switches. So if they fall down, the vest blows. So you need to first, before you start running, find close cover. Get a place where you can get down, assess the situation, where if bullets are flying, at least you're not going to get hit. Figure out what's going on. Where's the firing coming from? Where's the action happening? Look around for a route to find a way out where you're safe. Once you find that route, move. And then keep working step by step. Shelter, assess, move. Shelter, assess, move. It cannot be one quick sprint. Because if you make that quick sprint, you're going to draw attention to yourself, you're going to expose yourself, and you're going to get shot. That's it's just something that we've learned. And Mike's dead on. I mean, as long as you keep yourself calm, keep yourself in the situation itself. Don't overthink. If you start overthinking, you're going to make decisions steps before you need to make those decisions, and it's going to put you at risk. It's going to put your family at risk. Move secure.
Great advice. I appreciate that, Cleve. Mike, when you were talking, and Cleve as well, as far as, getting your head straight, all I kept thinking was about our mutual friend, Tony Blauer, saying, weaponize the flinch. So something's come at you, you've autonomically flinched, recognize that you flinched, and now go into fight mode and not, freeze mode. Mike, I got to ask you a question, because, you're Green Beret, you're combat deployed multiple times. the importance of the Z-axis for the average person. So it's not just scanning what's going on like this, but looking up and down in an urban environment and threats that aren't necessarily directly in your line of view. They're overhead or in some cases even underground.
Yeah, it's really important. I think we get tied to our patterns of life and we avoid seeing the exploitation that bad guys are experts at, right? They look at the advantage. For them, the tactical advantage is the places where you're most complacent, which is meaning the places that you're most routine. So if you see things and they're most routine, well, they're going to exploit where it's not. And so everybody's cheering at the end of a Boston Marathon and they're amassed in a crowd. They're not paying attention because why would they? They're paying attention to the runners coming across the finish line. Well, that's where the pressure cooker bomb was, the first device that clacked off at the end of the Boston Marathon and killed several people. And they had a second device that was going to bait everybody in. So yeah, in CQB, you want to have 360-degree awareness. But like Khalid said, one of the focuses needs to be is observing the technical data that you're bringing in to make your next move. I thought immediately when he said that, the Mandela Bay shooting. The Mandela Bay shooting he was shooting from an elevated position. Nobody really understood what was going on, and the natural inclination was to run. Except when everybody started to run, there was people in the crowd saying, "Get down, get down." And what they did is they got down and they died in place. And so I would err on the side of your own instincts and your own observation, because if you could look up and you potentially see where the fire is coming from because you're using your senses, you hear it, you see the flash, you can make your own decision. And many people did that survived. Unfortunately, 50 plus, I think it was 52 people didn't survive. And lastly, the most haunting thing, because I knew several officers that were there, were the amount of people who were piled on top of each other in the open that died in place. And one police officer told me the most haunting thing that I'll never forget is all the cell phones of all the loved ones contacting them as they were laying in piles, and them knowing as first responders they would never be on the receiving end because there were 52 plus fatalities in that field.
Wow, that's crazy, Mike. And when you mentioned secondary attack, by the way, for those people who aren't familiar with the attack in Vegas, at least the details, he anticipated that they would try to exit the area in a certain direction where there were gas tanks or propane tanks. And he tried to shoot them, get them to explode, but he didn't have heavy enough, rounds with them to penetrate it. They just bounced off of it. But that would have taken it to a whole other level of magnitude. So, Mike, let me lay segment 2 here as far as identifying kill zones and secondary ambush sites, which is good that you took us in that direction automatically. I'd like you to define a kill zone, speak to some common kill zone locations, like, say, a food court in a mall, parking garages, hospital centers, those sort of things. Then maybe speak a little bit more to secondary ambushes, and we'll just let it go where it goes from there.
Yeah, I'll take you back to 17-year-old Private Glover in Fort Benning, Georgia, infantry basic training and AIT advanced individual training. And it's all derived from the field manual 7-8, which is basically infantry tactics. And this is the doctrine many of these guys adopt. And the wild thing about their adoption of these tactics is it's so simple, but nobody pays attention to it. If you ask any police officer, how do you shoot, move, communicate? They would say, what do you mean? I could do that right now. They're like, no. What do you look for to indicate that somebody's potentially maneuvering on you? Do you understand flank maneuver? Do you understand individual movement techniques? Do you understand ambushes and raids? They don't understand any of that. But when you understand the doctrine, you could see it coming. One of the reasons I advise my patrons on my Patreon about 7-8 is because I want them to see it and recognize it before they become victims. For example, as you just described, there's a kill zone. Well, there's 3 elements that make an ambush. Security, which is the outer ring, providing security for the assault force that's conducting the attack. The assault force, who's actually doing the brunt of the work, and then support by fire, typically the mass casualty producing weapon system. And it could be a bomb, right?
Yep.
So if I understand that, then I understand if I'm on the X and I happen to be where the assault line is and I break contact in the parking lot, I better expect contact because I might run into the security element that's waiting in the parking lot, that's providing early warning. They see me and then they gun me down. But I think I'm safe because, again, it's like a movie, right? You jump out the window, you jump through the breach point, and you're safe. That's not how this works against terrorists who understand how to operate on the battlefield. Lastly, the technicalities are many, but it's, again, basic doctrine. One of the things you should pay attention to is subversion and sabotage, but also every singular attack, maybe it's an explosion or it's an opening up of gunfire, will typically have a secondary means of creating casualties. So it's the explosion that draws them in that creates another explosion. It's the explosion that makes them what's called squirt out. They start breaking contact and then they become casualties in an open field. It's exactly what the Mandalay shooter did. He opened fired. Everybody started moving towards where he predicted they would, away from the stage, towards the tanks. And again, heat and pressure are the main ways that you combust anything. He didn't have enough heat and enough pressure when he shot 308 rounds at the tanks that had very thick steel on them.
Mike, before I bring Khalid up for his thoughts on this, could you describe the concept of a fatal funnel?
Yeah, it's very simple. And a lot of people in the tactical world will default to the term fatal funnel for a threshold. It's not. A fatal funnel is any place that you're vulnerable to attack. And it could be a hallway, a stairwell. It could be a threshold of a door. It could be inside of an aircraft where there's a linear target. What I like to look at it as is vehicles. I've had many friends, including myself, who's been in gunfights in and around vehicles in combat. When you receive rounds from, let's say you're driving away and it's coming from your 6 o'clock where you just came from, and somebody inadvertently or deliberately sends rounds your way, any of those rounds that come near your vehicle are likely to follow the skin of the vehicle's metal, the sheet metal. It's the same concept in a hallway. It's the same concept in a threshold. Partially, you're most visible because you're walking through a doorway. That's where you come through a doorway. It's why instead of walking, I mean, we did this for a period of time. Instead of going through the door, we just blew a hole next to it. And then in Afghanistan, I was part of this evolution. I've been on target when we did it. Then the enemy got smart and set up ambushes. And then we landed on the rooftop and he would use a spider hole charge to blow a hole in it. And then basically put either a grenade or a gun in the port, right? So it's normal for you to be gunned down in a threshold of a doorway because that's where people come and go. The other element to that is if you're in a hallway, for example, a longer hallway, and somebody just takes the AK and they put it around the corner and they open fire, those rounds are going to go down the least path of resistance. They're going to skip off the walls and then you're going to become a casualty. So it's advisable to stay in those areas the shortest amount of time that you can. It's like crossing a linear danger area, an LDA. You don't mosey across a road in the middle of combat. You haul ass. Same thing with thresholds, hallways, and anywhere you could be a potential victim.
So just because we're on this topic, there is some element to Sarah and Khalid's intel that says it's potential. There is the potential that these ISIS small cells could go door to door like they did on 10/7 and slaughter people in their homes. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on two scenarios, and then I'm coming to you, I promise, Khalid. And that is, number one, if you have no kids, and number two, if you do have kids and your rooms are on opposite sides of the home, best practices. Mike Glover, best practices.
Yeah, the best practice is to come up with a safe room that's on your side of the house and consolidate. Train your kids or condition them to meet at a rendezvous point. And some things to think about, because this isn't often discussed, it's a great question, is what is a safe room? Well, in the CIA, when I worked in safe houses, in the military, when I worked in safe houses, it was very different than a self-defense or a terrorist scenario in a home. Let me give you a great example that happened on October 7th, and also happened, I know because I was part of the investigation, happened in Libya. What do you do when you have a safe house made of concrete? You hide because you think you're protected. What does the terrorists do? AQIM, Ansar al-Sharia, they burn a tire. They light a tire on fire. A lot of people think Ambassador Stevens, Chris Stevens, was killed by being tortured, by being shot, by being prodded. He wasn't. I know because I saw the pictures of his body. He died of smoke inhalation. Because if you're in a room and you contain yourself there, protecting yourself from bullets, well, then you're the easiest to be smoked out. I used to say this all the time. I actually got banned off of, you appreciate this, Chris. I got banned off of Instagram for a year because I did a post on underground bunkers. And I said, yeah, bad tactic because I could kill you with a garden hose. And it banned me for a year because they're like, oh, domestic threats of violence. So it's not just thinking about getting your kids to a safe site and room. You need to be able to defend the space. Yeah. Do you have GSM or CDMA? Can you actually make a call via data or over the horizon on your cell phone in that room, right? People make concrete bunkers. They don't think about the comms. That's going to be the life tether to the other side. So I think, have a defendable position that you could bring your kids in. And if you're a tactical, competent human being, you don't wait to sit there and ambush them when they come through the door. You're proactive. You go kill them where they are. Many people on October 7th were killed because all the bad guys did was stick a gun through a port, open fire. They went at hitting a couple of them. And if they didn't comply, they just lit the thing on fire. You have to think about that because, again, this is terrorism. This is not a criminal act.
That's just crazy. Would it surprise you to know that I have a mirror safety C21 sitting right beside me at all times?
Oh, I would be amiss if I didn't say this. Consider a ballistic shield. I work with a GIGN in Africa, and I saw their tactics, including the conversation that we had with Khalid talking about the Paris attacks. The ballistic shield is one of the best things that a civilian should buy because, again, when you're looking for the tactical advantage in a stairwell, a threshold, a hallway, that ballistic shield is going to get you the penetration you need to either save your family or fight instead of dying in place.
That's awesome advice, Mike. I appreciate that one very much. So, Khalid, we're into like segment 2 of this attack here, and I have a handful of questions for you. Tackle them however you want, whichever ones you want or don't want. But let's start with hospitals. Why are the hospitals being targeted? You broke the news before anybody else. And so hospitals, trauma centers, why are they being a focus? And did I catch that the French said this week that you mentioned earlier that they had intel that their hospitals were going to be attacked? Okay. So I'm not crazy.
Yeah, that's why they initiate a mass casualty procedure, because they are now all of a sudden talking about the things we've been talking about since April, the hospitals that are target. And we kept saying Europe is in this, Europe is in this, Europe is in this, but they didn't pay attention. When Sarah and I first started talking about these things, first it was the airplane plot. It was the Al-Qaeda aviation plot. And then we heard out of Afghanistan that there was a coordinated attack plan and they were going to target the hospitals. Why the hospitals, you ask? Number one, you have immovable people. They are easy targets. People that are bedridden because they're sick, they're connected to machines to stay alive, walk up, put a gun to their head, boom, it's game over. You have a huge number of casualty events. Number two, when you take control of a hospital, all of the people you've injured in the attacks around the city, where do they go? I mean, you've taken away that care center where they would be treated, where their lives could be saved. You have put everything on the people themselves, which is why we keep talking about stop the bleed training, get that training, understand how tourniquets work, so that if, God forbid, the hospital is taken control of, at least you can do basic first aid while you wait for EMS to show up, if EMS is available to get out to you. The hospital is a huge psychological impact. Go ahead, Chris.
Khalid, did you weigh in today on the discussion in the Signal chat on tourniquets by chance?
Yeah, I did. Yep, I did. Yep.
So I want to hear your thoughts and Mike's on this as well, because it's not an area of expertise for me. I just have very limited knowledge. But I like Mike Sterling's comment when he jumped in and he said, stop focusing on these little, tourniquets that are an inch or so. Like he was saying, you got to have tourniquets that are at least 3 inches wide. Want to hear your thoughts on that. And then when Mike comes back up, we'll get his thoughts as well. But go ahead.
90% of people don't even know how to apply a tourniquet or what a tourniquet looks like. And the more you start to understand these are things that it's not just a terrorist attack. I mean, if you're out camping someplace, you stumble upon a car accident somewhere, that tourniquet comes in handy wherever you are. And it's a good skill to learn, just like stop the bleed is a good skill to learn. But the tourniquet is something that has to be applied very carefully, because you are cutting off blood to a part of the body. You are cutting off blood to a part of the body. And when you cut it off, you've got to understand that's got to be applied tight. That's got to be applied in a way that you make that bleeding stop. And what we saw in the Signal chat, the nice little device that was posted in there, that's a fantastic thing to keep in your go bag with you, because God forbid you have to apply a tourniquet. You're not looking around for something. You're not looking for a pen. You put that thing on and go crack, 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 and it tightens right up to the point where you need to tighten up to. But the point that we keep coming back to is that you've got to understand how a tourniquet is applied. What is a tourniquet? Because if you don't, it's game over.
So I got one more question for you before I bring Mike back up on stage, but are you familiar with the adage that sometimes it's better to be thought of as a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a winner for that tonight here. So this person here says, AQAP said they don't work with Houthis, and they also said they hate Shia. So you are wrong. I'm going to preface this before you address it, Khalid, by saying we're paying the Taliban almost $80 million a week. 40 million is just one bucket. Then there's a bunch more add up to 80 million for the Taliban to basically keep Al-Qaeda, ISIS, TTP, ISKP all under control, right? And what they're doing is they're dressing up their own guys as Al-Qaeda and ISIS, committing terrorist acts in Pakistan. Then they kill their own guys, and then they come back to Sebastian Gorka and us in America and say, see, we're the good guys. We're on your side. We killed these terrorists. If you believe a word of what these guys say, you win that award that I just mentioned from that adage. Take it away, Khalid. Then we go back to Mike.
I think I enjoy these kinds of comments. If you don't understand that, I mean, we've said this in every episode that we've done of this series, that if you don't understand that all the terror groups are now working together, it's in a UN report. Yeah. Okay.
So, hey, Mike is a CIA officer. If it's in a UN report, what does that mean? It's 100%, right?
Let me connect the dots. The Taliban is working with IRGC, which is Iran's military that supports the Houthis. Now, tell me if the UN's right or if we're right. Because the UN only knows what they can see, what they know, what people tell them. We actually see it. The Iranian border with Afghanistan is completely controlled by Iran. Inside of Afghanistan, Habibullah Akhundzada, who is the leader of the Taliban, is in the lap of the Iranis. When you start from there, you go, okay, link tree. You've got the leader of the Taliban, who's sitting in the lap of the IRGC. The IRGC controls the Houthis. The Taliban is connected with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. How are you not working together? I mean, this is like listening to Sebastian Gorka tell us the Taliban has the same objectives we have. Are you joking? You have to read. Look, when you read a UN report, we read the same UN reports. We go, okay, this doesn't make sense. Redline that, because that doesn't match ground intelligence. Because when you draw the link tree, you have to understand that the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, IRGC, this is one unit. It's one unit. They're all working together. Don't believe me? Go out on the internet, look it up. The IRGC was just in Afghanistan 2 weeks ago, buying the database of all of the British and US intelligence officers that served in Afghanistan so they could target them.
With full biometrics on those guys.
Full biometrics. And what did the Taliban want in return? They said, we don't want money. No, we don't want money. Just recognize us as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. That was the trade-off. And tell me again, the UN is right and we're wrong. I mean, come on.
Yeah, of course. So Mike, as a former CIA GRS guy, I'd love to hear your opinion on that take on the intel. Then I want to hear your take on tourniquets. Then I want to get back on track with the attack, because the next segment is all about gray man. So 3 things.
Yeah, it's an arrogant take. I mean, it's like saying that we weren't fighting proxy forces in the GWAT in Iraq. I mean, I personally have been hit in my convoy, not personally. The vehicle in front of me got hit with an EFP. Those enforced, let's just say the tech coming from Iran was creating more casualties on the battlefield, including guys that we were rolling up who happened to be part of the IRGC. I mean, there's a reason why Soleimani got it outside of BIOP, right? Yeah. So this idea that there's not interconnections and networks, and that the Taliban and all of their freedom fighting alliances is not doing what's in the best interest of the Taliban, it's going to lead to terrorist connections and organizations. On the topic of tourniquets, everything that Khalid said is masterfully put. That's what you have to do in order to survive. I'll add a couple caveats. One, at peak, Fieldcraft Survival, my company that I founded, was selling more tourniquets to civilians than any company in America. That was through North American Rescue and Tactical Med Solutions. When I came out of the military 9 years ago, and started saying, hey, you need to carry a tourniquet, more from my CIA experience of being in a civilian vehicle, soft skin, with a Glock 17 in my waistband in the middle of Yemen, with a machine gun in the trunk if I was lucky to access it, I went, holy crap, you are your own first response. And when you need a QRF, this whole analogy of like when seconds count, law enforcement's minutes away. When you're in Yemen, when seconds count, QRF isn't coming ever. And you just have to figure out or die. I mean, that's the bottom line. Compartment syndrome is an urban myth, especially because it's been proven in the GWAT, meaning if you apply a tourniquet to your extremities, you're stopping the blood flow. The alternative, you bleed to death and die. So if guys are like, well, I mean, I was an EMT when I was 19 years old at Fort Myer, Virginia. I went to the short course, and I learned that a tourniquet was a piece of cloth and a stick. And if you applied it, you actually didn't apply it, because if you did apply it, then there's too much liability. The reality is, if you're in a gunfight or an ambush or a raid or a domestic terrorist attack, you're going to need to apply tourniquets. And the best way to do that is an NAEMT certified, take the acronym, just forget about it, but basically TAC Med Solutions or North American Rescue, because they're combat proven tourniquets. This is not new tech. This is old tech. They were doing it in 1861 in the Civil War. Guys were using it on surgeons' tables to basically occlude the bleed so they could chop off the limb. And some guys in the field were applying them for like grazing wounds and then losing the limb. So you have to have it. Lastly on that, it's not just tourniquets, it's tourniquets. Know that. But it's also chest seals. A hyphen chest seal is mandatory equipment for stopping the bleed, because it's not just about the blood that comes out, it's respiration. It actually used to be number one in the priority. Now it's MARS, which is massive hemorrhaging, airway, and respiration, because your respiration, your system is really good and clever at figuring things out and how to survive. But if you get shot in the chest, upper thorax, and you compromise your chest cavity, your lungs will collapse, because you basically created a void, and then that void is not equal pressure to the atmosphere, and then your lung collapses, and then you'll die by choking on your own blood and lack of oxygen. You have a hyphen chest seal. I've done it in real life, in combat, and unfortunately in a civilian situation, where I put a hyphen chest seal on a buddy of mine who had a laceration across his chest, and then needle decompressed him, which is a little bit more advanced. But guys, this isn't rocket science. I mean, you can go to an EMT basic course. You can go to a tactical combat casualty care course open to civilians all over the internet.
Man, that's awesome, Mike. So back to the topic at hand. You know, we've got this terrorist attack happening, and we're trying to exfil, and our recommendations revolve around, you know, not being conspicuous. Call it the gray man movements. I saw somebody in the comments, by the way, say gray with the letter A question mark. That's how we spell it in America, GRAY, just so you know. So speak to at a high level, Mike, the gray man and how that would apply to somebody who's caught on the X in one of these complex coordinated attacks, and, you know, maybe something that'll stick with them if, God forbid, they get caught on the X.
Yeah, let me sum it up with my own experiences in the military. If you were a Green Beret, you thought low vis was a beard and man jams, right? Being 6'1" in Afghanistan, actually northern Afghanistan, worked out pretty good for me, and I'll explain that in a second. But that's what most Americans think. Like, to blend in, you just grow the beard, you forget your tattoos because everybody got sleeves and SF, and then you wear man jams. That's not low vis. With your Suntoe watch, your solo boots, and all the indicators. I really didn't understand this as a young operator. I understood it as a senior operator because of all the experiences I had in low vis singleton operations. Fast forward in my career, I'm a technical surveillance expert in Delta Force. I'm in G Squadron, and I'm driving a vehicle with a beard because I look Nuristani, and Khalid would appreciate that.
Yep. On
the border of northeastern Afghanistan with Chitral and all the area, if I put a little red dye in my beard, man, all the guys like me on Fridays. But I could be 6'1". I'm sitting in a chair. I'm driving the van. To my right is an Afghan partnering unit tier 1 operator from Afghanistan who speaks the language. We're driving. We call it the bang bus. Obviously, anything a bus and Americans do, it's a bang bus. But we're following the case officer and doing protection for them. There's 2 Rangers behind me in burqas. One of them I later worked in the CIA with, and I was his team leader on these missions, in burqas navigating on CF-19 Panasonic old school laptops. Behind them is a curtain with 2 Rangers with machine guns, M48s and SAW machine guns. And then there's a technical surveillance guy like me tagging and tracking and live tracking the vehicle that in front that we're watching. That is a low vis operation. Now, how long does low vis last? It lasts about this long, because every local, once you might pass the first sniff, and that's the key for civilians. That's what you're trying to avoid, right? So one of the things that you said about this pretending to be dead, there's a Pakistani national, fascinating enough, at Virginia Tech. The book is Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley. I actually quote it in my book, Prepared, A Manual for Surviving Worst Case Scenarios. In the Virginia Tech shooting, 32 Americans killed by one, I hate to say this, but he's Korean, and I'm shamed that he actually is Korean. He locked the doors, chained them shut, and went classroom to classroom. 91% of all the students that were killed were shot in the back of the head. Why? Because they hid under the desk, and they died in place. This guy, who was Pakistani, pretended to be dead, not because he deliberately planned it, because he actually thought he had been shot. He was so hypo-aroused, which is this faint fawn response, that his legs were numb. Part of that process is a chemical process of opiates, natural opiates in your system that basically causes paralysis. So he thought he was shot. He couldn't move his legs, and he was frozen in place, but that worked for him. Unfortunately, it didn't work for a lot of people in his classroom. Many died. But when the shooter came up, the only thing he thought was, I'm going to die, and he went into that mode and killed over. That's what saved him. So there might be many circumstances where freezing, hiding until the bad guys have moved over, and then fling out the back door. Outside of that, it's just basic technical skill sets of like breaking contact. But this idea that somehow you're going to escape the situation because the bad guy's not going to recognize you, they will recognize you. they're trained to recognize you. And they're trained, like Khalid said, for mass casualties. What the first thing I thought about in a hospital attack, they're not just going to go room to room and kill the old people. They're going to go where the babies are. Why? Because there's 7 babies in an incubator room that they could smash on the ground and take videos of it, uploaded to Inspire and disseminated across the globe. There are situations like that have happened throughout the Middle East that still haunt me today, that is still going on. It happened in Pakistan.
Yeah. Yep. It did. Yep.
Yeah. Appreciate
We-
that. So Khalid, we don't need to talk about the gray man stuff. I'm going to go to segment 4 with Mike in a second. I want you to speak to how the Shia and the Sunni who were always at each other's throats are not at each other's throats anymore. And we still got this guy here. He's trying to say Iran busted an ISIS cell. There's no evidence, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the guy's talking out the side of his mouth. He's digging a deeper hole than he should. Go ahead and address that. Then I want to pivot back to Mike as quick as possible because we only have 14 more minutes with him.
All right. Look, Shia Sunni was a battle that went on for decades. We had it here in Pakistan as well. Iran, Iraq were at war with each other. You have Iraqi Shia supported by Iran inside of Iraq right now. They're just waiting for U.S. forces to pull out, and they're going to start wars again. But they're not starting wars because it's Shia Sunni. They are starting wars now because they want control of Iraq. That's the thing that people don't understand. That dividing line that existed before, that Shia Sunni, Deobandi, Wahhabi, those are all gone. This is now one Islamic army that have decided, okay, we'll all fight within each other after we accomplish the one objective. Once we've established the caliphate, then we'll fight with each other. That's a war. That's a war within our own house. The easiest way I can explain this to you is I can be fighting with my brother in my house. I can be fighting with my cousin in my house. But if someone comes to my door and attacks me, we're one. That's the mentality they're operating with right now, that we want to spread the caliphate across the world. So we'll put our differences aside for now, and we'll fight everybody else. Once it happens, once we've established control, then we'll go back to our infighting. Then Shia Sunni will start again. Then Deobandi and Wahhabi will start again, because we've established our control. Once the control is done, then we'll start dividing out pieces. Now, this same person made a comment, there's no proof that HTS was supported by Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. Hi. There's a HTS camp in Afghanistan. There's 12,000 fighters trained by Al-Qaeda, trained by the Islamic State. I challenge you to prove me wrong.
Well said. All right. So we're in the home stretch here, Mike. We're into the final segment of this scenario. And at this particular point, the consideration is all of the extraction routes are blocked. So, it could be a lockdown environment, might be locked down by attackers, police emergency protocols. What are the alternative exit strategies? And I mean, the obvious one is try break through a barrier, but that's probably, you better have a pretty high level of training and whatnot. But I'd like to get your thoughts on that. What happens when the X is locked down and people are trying to get off of it and get out of there?
Well, it's the same thing when it rains or snows in eastern United States. I mean, Atlanta, Georgia is a good example of this, where they got 2 inches of ice and the entire metropolitan area shut down for days. And there were people who just submitted and stayed in their vehicles and would nearly die in place if they weren't morbidly obese. But when you look at this specific situation where all the focus is on first responders getting to the X, you're going to be gridlocked and you're not going to have a place to go. What is your options? Yeah, off-road might be an option, but we're not talking about that in a tier 1 city. It's mostly an urban sprawl at best, meaning an urban, densely populated area with buildings becoming more dispersed the sooner you get out of it. But going off-road is not going to be an option. you need to have the ability to break contact and dismount. And so it's why we talk about go bags. Why would you need a go bag? Well, how far is it to your house from where you would be potentially gridlocked? If you work in the San Francisco Bay Area, across the bridge, and things pop off, how are you going to get back home to San Jose? If you haven't asked yourself that question, ask yourself that question. Look at the mileage. It's easy to map recce, do it, and then figure out what the requirements are going to be. You got 2 children with you? Well, guess what? It just got more complicated, and get a bigger bag. I mean, this stuff is not super complicated, but the idea of just bedding down and hoping somebody is going to save you, hope is not a course of action. Nobody's coming to save your ass. You have to figure out on your own, especially because the priorities, remember, like Khalid said, if EMTs come at all, EMTs aren't coming to rescue your ass because you got injured in your arm. So what's the alternative? Well, how do you fix that? Do you have the ability to go home and, I don't know, reach into your medicine cabinet with antibiotics and sort it yourself? You got to cut the umbilical cord, and you got to depend on yourself and be more self-reliant.
Average American works 18 miles from home now. A few years ago, it was quoted at 15 miles from home, but it's 18 miles from home the average American works.
Well,
so,
when I was at my peak as an operator, I could do an 18-mile rucksack, 45 pounds dry in 3 hours. So in 3 hours, I could do 12 miles in 2 hours, and I could do 18 miles in 3 hours. I actually did 18 miles in 3 hours and 4 minutes through varied terrain as far as like elevation gains with a 45-pound ruck dry. So that's a good start point. I mean, I think the big Army standard for expert infantry badge, for example, is 12 miles with a 35-pound ruck in 3 hours. It might be 4 even, because we've gotten softer since then. It might be 4. But you should shoot for a minimum of 18 miles, packing whatever day bag you have, 72-hour bug out bag you have in 4 hours.
Yeah, well said. I mean, realistically, the average American theoretically should be able to get home in 1 day if they're on the Ankle Express, theoretically. But of course, not everybody's in good enough shape for that. I got a question for you, Mike, because it came up in the comments there. Somebody mentioned that they have Narcan in their kit. Let me give you a couple of points on Narcan, and I want to hear your thoughts, Mike. Number one, you can get Narcan for free in every state now. So there's lots of resources online. Nextdistro.org, nextdistro.org. Click your state. That'll connect you with the right people. They'll send you 2 boxes of maximum strength, 2 doses of maximum strength in each box. So you get 4 doses of Narcan. Here's the problem, though, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, Mike. 80% of the fentanyl that's been interdicted by law enforcement for the first 6 months of 2025, 80% has xylazine in it. Once you put xylazine in fentanyl, Narcan does absolutely nothing, because xylazine just shuts your entire system down. It slows you down to the point where your heart stops beating, your lungs stop working. What do you do when you're exposed to something? Is there anything that can be done, Mike, if somebody's exposed to fentanyl that's laced with xylazine now? I know it's not in the brief, but
yeah, that's a correct. I mean, that's a correct analysis of the complication of that. But I would also say, if I thought about this, we've talked about it kind of in the WMD world. I've done consulting as a military guy with DITRA, and it will scare the hell out of you when you start seeing the potential uses of fentanyl in aerosol form to initiate an attack. I mean, can you imagine, like, you're trying to create mass casualties and you go into a stadium and you clack off a bomb full of fentanyl, and then it does 90% of the job for you, right? You don't even have to send around. Well, the problem with Narcan is you can't self-administer it when you're having a seizure because of fentanyl. And if it's in your pocket and nobody knows about it, well, it's like, I don't know, it's like having a pistol in your home and your spouse doesn't know about the pistol in the home, right? Guys like to compartmentalize that information because it's mine, because I get to go on the weekends with the guys. It's like, you better start cross-training. And so what I would say is, one, it's an effective tool. Have it if you have kids, especially if they're exposed to crackheads on the side of the road, or they're exposed to a terrorist attack, you should have it one for everybody, and everybody should be able to cross-pollinate against each other. In the case that it is laced with something that deters it, good luck.
And that's unfortunately, I thought that was probably going to be the right answer. So Khalid and I, we still have a little bit of ground left to cover, but Mike has obligations here at the top of the hour. So Mike, last couple minutes here, and Khalid, is there anything that the two of you would like to touch on before Mike jets? You've got 5 minutes.
Mike, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go ahead, Khalid.
All right, look, there's a couple things. Mike is giving you guys a lot of information. Number one, getting off the X, do it securely, do it with your mind in place. Number two, once you try and exfil out, we talked about this in an episode before. If you can rent a storage container someplace, a storage unit someplace that's close by where your family can move to and you can move to, don't let the cost be prohibitive. Get 3 or 4 families, because it's not a place you're going to live. It's just a place you're going to stop, settle down, calm down, wait out the beginning of the fighting, and then get out of the area. But it gives you a place you can move to. If you cannot get to your home, kids are close by, office is close by, and you've got a storage unit close by, rent a place. Put your food there, put a vehicle someplace there, so that when you have to move, you have an easy way to get out of the area. Start thinking out of the box. And Mike, I want to ask you a question. Someone sent me and I already gave them the answer, but I want to hear your answer on this as well. Someone asked me, said, when this whole thing starts and day 1 and day 2 roll through, who's going to come to save us? And I said, dude, come on. Who's going to come to save you? There's not going to be anything left by the time day 2 starts. So
yeah, it's a very good points. No one's coming to save you is the answer. And I, the idea of caches is super critical. I mean, I'm a backcountry hunter, and we cache all the time. I mean, we don't tell anybody we cache because we don't want anybody compromising our caches. But you would do that because you're disaffected and you have to make up ground. You don't want to go in 18 miles to set up shop with everything on your back when you could pre-stage it. If you have friends, neighbors, family, those are your safe houses. And it's a great way to be more social and to develop a network and actually have the conversation. Like, hey, buddy, you live more rural than me. We live above Salt Lake City. If something happens, maybe we'll consolidate at your place, right? Yeah. Have a consolidation plan. And then lastly, something that came to mind is on first aid, and it's not often discussed enough, is I always talk about on your person, have a tourniquet. In your vehicle, have a first aid bag. In your house, have an aid station. Now, what does that mean? It means have a hospital. I have thousands of books. I mean, thousands of books. And I've always loved books. The most significant element that is going to benefit you about books is they're a form of reference without the internet. They're your offline maps. And so if you have a book on how to do a surgery or how to treat a wound or bacterial infection, well, you don't need the internet. You just need the book and then the tools that are required and be willing to do some training. Antibiotics is everybody depends on this system. They can't get it. They just go, well, I'll be sick for another week. Okay, so what happens when everything is shut down grid-wise and then you have to treat your child's bacterial infection that can complicate and can kill your child? Well, you better have it on hand. And that's very significant. I think I used a wellness company, TWC. The wellness company has a kit called the Field Emergency Kit. And that Field Emergency Kit, I've already gone through it because I don't have to go to the hospital to VA and wait a day to get antibiotics. I just go in my cupboard and open the box, and I'm smart enough to use Google to figure it out. And the wellness company, again, I'm not paid or sponsored by them. They provide a little manual that has all the breakdown of the things. We have to get more reliant and smarter about these things because it's not just about the terrorist attack. It's about just everyday things that go on in this country.
I appreciate that, Mike. So thank you for your time tonight. Khalid and I still have a little bit left to finish up with you all, so stay put. Mike, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks again. There you go, the ballistic shield.
Yeah, this one's made by Tyr Tactical, and the cool thing about Tyr, TYR Tactical, Jason Beck owns it. Again, not affiliated. I pay for the shield. It's made in the U.S. and it's in Arizona. So this thing is, capable of defending your family in that worst case scenario. So
That's freaking awesome. That's
Cool,
great,
man.
Mike. All right,
You got it.
appreciate it, Mike.
yep,
Take
thank
care,
you.
Mike.
We'll talk soon. All right, Khalid. So we have a handful of things to tie up here. There's clearly a misunderstanding here. So Manley, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but I know for a fact that Narcan will work against fentanyl poisoning. You weren't listening to what I said. 80% of the fentanyl that's been interdicted by cops in the first 2 quarters of 2025 is laced with xylazine. Narcan will not save you from fentanyl that has been laced with xylazine. Xylazine is a sedative. It shuts down your body's ability to even function. So here you go. Will Narcan save someone who's ingested fentanyl laced with xylazine? Narcan can reverse the effects of fentanyl, but it will not work on xylazine because xylazine is not an opiate. It's a veterinary sedative, a tranquilizer that depresses the central nervous system in a different way. In other words, you stop breathing, your heart starts pumping. So please don't put bad information out there where people think that they have Narcan in their bag and they're safe. They're not. So I just want to make that clear. Some of the topics we discuss like this are life and death. And when you put bad information out there like that, you're putting somebody's life at risk. Narcan will not save you from xylazine that's mixed with fentanyl, and 80% of the fentanyl on the street today is laced with xylazine, pardon me. So just keep that in mind. So Khalid, I want to come back to you on the just wrapping up the whole getting off the X scenario. Give us the Cliff Notes version from the top: immediate survival actions, identifying kill zones and secondary ambushes, leveraging gray man, finding an extraction route, and then any suggestions you have for people as far as maybe family drills and preparedness are concerned. I'm going to turn it over to you for all of that. So I'm going to put you actually on screen bigger here just a sec. There we go. All right, take it away.
All right, look, because we deal with these situations quite often, we actually went through it last night as well. The first thing you need to understand is your auditory abilities are the first thing you need to count on, because you need to understand where the fire is coming from. You need to understand where the action is coming from, so you don't end up running in that direction. If it's coming from above, get down. Like that's the first. If you remember, my answer started with that first thing: find a safe place first. Don't run, don't move, find a safe place, shelter in place. Once you're sheltered in a place where you are protected from gunfire, then start getting a 360 situational awareness. Where's the bullet? Where are the bullets coming from? Where's the attack coming from? What kind of attack is coming? And then look for your exit points. Move quick. Get to your second point, get sheltered, again, do a 360, move again. The more you stay inside your head and move, the easier this is going to be. The second thing, and Mike went into a lot of detail in talking about it, avoid the kill box. Terrorists are trained in developing a kill box, that they've got you cornered from all sides. Once they've got you cornered from all sides, even if it's on top, they will take out mass casualties. They throw a grenade in, it's game over, and they've taken 20, 30, 40, 50 bodies in one move. A kill box is when you have no way to find security. A hallway is a kill box. A parking garage is a kill box because you have nowhere to shelter. So avoid situations where you're like that. Yes, staying out in the open is dangerous, but at least if you're out in the open, you can run to another location, get behind the corner of a building, and move from there. But if you're locked into a place where you have nowhere to escape to, it's game over. You have no out, and you need to understand that. Number 3, situational awareness. Keep your eyes, your head, and your ears working. Those are your 3 biggest assets. While you're moving, keep your ears moving. Wherever you hear gunfire, distance, try and judge how far away is it. Keep your eyes roaming on people. Start looking for people that look like potential threats, and you'll be able to pick them off very quickly. The way they move their heads, how they're watching things, you'll know if it's a threat or not. Shelter, so that person doesn't see you. Once they move on, then move out. That, again, you have to play inside of here. And one of the things that we do at Command 11 with our teams is we put them through absolute hell when we train them. We will put gunfire on you. We will throw grenades at you. We will throw flashbangs at you to get you mentally stressed to the point where we can see how you operate. Because what happened last night with us is a normal occurrence when we're out in the field. But to have it happen at where we're staying was, it sent us off. We have 8 guys in my detail, and we went out and we were literally roaming the streets of the city that we were in last night with weapons in hand and looking for targets that who was trying to stage the incident against us. That is not a training level thing. That is an inside the head thing, because you can be fully trained and not understand what to do when the situation hits. That's something you need to keep in mind. Now, in terms of getting your family ready, take them out in the woods. Take stuff away. You don't have a sleeping bag. How do you find cover? You don't have a way to go and cook something. How are you going to cook? How are you going to cut something when you don't have a knife? Bring it with you. Just don't show it to your kids. See how they operate. See how they act. And then use that opportunity to train them in what they need to do if they're in that situation. You don't want to create stress with children because they don't learn in a stressful situation. Get them trained up in a calm place out in the middle of nowhere, so they don't have anything that they can run to the kitchen and run to the garage and get them into a location where they actually have to think from here. That will help them now. It will give them a benefit later. Number 4, learn critical thinking. Just because something looks safe doesn't mean it's safe. You've got to understand that. In a battlefield situation, a garbage can may look safe to you to hide behind. There may be an IED inside of there. We've said this before. The terrorists have figured out, with all of the probing they've done, when the shopping mall empties out, where do they go? Where are they all put into a safe zone at? You think they haven't put a bomb there? You think they don't have a sniper sitting on top or an assault team to get you when you get there? That's 200 people in one place. And it's just open fire, and you've cleaned out the targets. Think carefully. If the sheeple are moving one way, look for a safer place for yourself, because that's where they want you to move. Don't move that way. Go the other way. So that would be my tips for you.
Look at the first 2 minutes of the attack in Mumbai, where one of the cells hit the train station. They killed 50 people in 2 minutes flat, and then exfilled and moved on to the next location. And they had everybody all bunched up inside that train station. So another example of a fatal funnel there. So we've covered everything tonight as far as the escape and evasion component is concerned. So I want to recognize today's hero of the day, and it goes to all of the ICE agents across America. These guys are doing the critical work of cleaning up the mess from the last administration, which was installed, not even legitimately elected. I can't wait to tell you who it is, but somebody from inside the Survival Dispatch family has been one of the lucky people hired by ICE and will be imminently out there doing what he likes to do the best, which is get the bad guys and get them the hell out of our country. So stay tuned for who that particular individual is. They've just got to finish all the final I's and T's in the contract, but pretty exciting that one of our own has taken that on. Next one up, this is a story of the day submitted by Tim Smith in our Signal chat. And again, our Signal chat, if you sign up at survivaldispatch.news for $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, Send your phone number to support@survivaldispatch.com. After you install Signal, do not hide your number. You can't get invites if you can't be found. You can turn it back on. You can hide your number again afterwards. But Tim submitted this story, and I saw a lot of bullshit on X today on this, Khalid, even though I didn't spend a lot of time on X. So this is 12 seconds. Video shows U.S. military conducting strike on drug vessel departing from Venezuela. Trump says 11 terrorists were killed. And here's what it looks like. So there were 11 members of TDA on this particular boat that we took out. So I saw a lot of belly aching and crying online. That's illegal. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah. You know what? That type of attitude doesn't hold water anymore. We've been under attack here in America for years through this asymmetrical, irregular warfare, killing our people with drugs, amongst all of the other shit that they've been pulling on our soil. It's time to go on the offense and take these guys down. And, all those people out there chanting death to America and wishing death upon America, you should be careful what you wish for. You know, just keep that in mind, because when we get fired up, things change dramatically for everybody, and it ain't for the better.
In seconds, things change.
Yeah. So moving on to the final part of tonight's episode, which is the conflicted question. So there's just Khalid and I left for this. Your son or daughter died because someone who had a lot of food didn't want to share. They refused every attempt to barter with you, and you feel that they did it out of selfish greed more than anything. Would you plot revenge against them, or do they have the right to do as they please with their resources? Khalid, this one's we'll start out with you.
This is a tough one. I mean, I understand losing a member of the family because someone decided they were going to hoard instead of share. But realistically, you don't have a level to go to revenge with them. You know the size of your family. You know what your consumption levels are. You should have stockpiled for yourself. I feel for the person whose family member died. But if you take this to a revenge level, you're going to end up with maybe another body. And it may be you that goes into the grave. You just have to let it go. God takes care of you. God will provide. And if you have a strong faith and you have a strong belief system, you know that God will take care of you. And what happened. And going towards revenge is just, it's going to take too much out of you.
Yeah, I would say anybody who's in this situation, shame on you for not stacking up your preps in advance. It's not somebody else's fault when you didn't do your due diligence, like Khalid said. So I would absolutely not hunt that person. I'd be pissed at myself for not having sufficient food, pissed at myself for not securing sufficient amounts of food. That kind of question kind of bothers me, because Khalid, I want to say it started in the 1980s. We started to see this element inside of our culture. And for those of you not aware, Khalid grew up here in America. He's spent 25 years of his life here, and he's coming back this way. So he knows what I'm talking about. But in the 1980s, this whole process of, well, they've got autism, or, they have attention deficit disorder. Yeah. We can't give them crap, for not doing the right thing. Bullshit. You can't give them crap. I don't buy in any of that crap at all. You're responsible for your own actions. End of story, not somebody else. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. We had something recently, Khalid, where somebody went off on us on Substack over, a Pava bomb, right? So basically, it's a little bit bigger than this pepper spray, but it's a pepper spray grenade, basically, PAVA. And it's only a 2% concentration. It's not like the military or law enforcement, which is 10% in many cases, 8 to 10%. This guy went off on me, Khalid, saying that people in some states were going to get arrested for using a Pava grenade because it's law enforcement only, and blah, 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 blah. My response was, number one, it's 2%. Number three, it is not illegal anywhere in the entire country. And number four, how about you take responsibility for your own actions? Yeah. Anytime we discuss self-defense, we always qualify it by saying, verify the laws in your jurisdiction. So
Yep.
what's applicable to us here in Florida is not applicable to you. I get that. We were the first ones to get stand your ground in 2006. It's a 3-sentence law. Even if your life is not in danger, if you think your life is in danger in the state of Florida, you are authorized to use deadly force. So we have radically different rules than, say, the left coast, New York, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I think that's it, Khalid. We've covered everything tonight. We're going to be back tomorrow night with the next installment in our Long War series. Again, you can watch them in any order. You can watch some of them, all of them. It's entirely up to you. Tomorrow night, we're going to get into that secondary wave of attacks more. In other words, the moment that the light bulb goes off and you go, oh, shit, it's not over. And that might be the next day, or the next day, because we go beyond secondary attacks, tertiary attacks, and even beyond that. And then my prediction again is that when this happens, it will alter America forever. It will alter the world forever. And we will be into the same situation that the Middle East has been in forever, since Christ was a cowboy, where it's just a part of life. You have this violence, and I'm not saying it's an acceptable part of life, but when you leave the front door open for 4 years, and you admit to releasing 200,000 special interest aliens, an SIA is a terrorist, period. There's no other definition. That's what it is. You don't believe me, go back and watch our episodes with J.J. Carroll, who was a 24-year CBP special agent. And if they're telling us, if the Biden DHS says it's 200,000 SIAs, it's a minimum of 400,000, 500,000. It's a big-ass number. You don't let that many terrorists into your country and think that this is going to be a one and done. It's not a one and done. And that's why we called this 144 series the Long War. So tomorrow night is going to be a pretty interesting topic. Jeff and Randy will be back, and the four of us, Khalid and I, will be discussing that. Other than that, I want to say thank you to all of our guardians out there who pay $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, 2.5 months for free, and all the extra stuff that you get. That plus our sponsors like CCW Safe and Carnival. It costs a lot of money to do what we do. There's a lot of people working behind the scenes that you don't know and you don't see, and we all have to put food on the table and bills to pay. And just our software alone, actually. So I've been telling people it's a little over $3,000. My wife ended up correcting me. We are now spending $4,000 a month on software subscriptions for everything you can imagine, from like the full Microsoft 365 for 19 people to the editing software that we use, to various subscriptions that we have to data that you can't get on the public internet, blah, blah, blah. So when somebody like Carnival comes along and pays us a monthly stipend to help us defer expenses, it's appreciated very, very much. Go to carnival.com, use the code EATMEAT, all one word, and you'll get 10% off. And if you go to CCW Safe, there's actually a link down below. We don't get affiliate money on that either, but we like to know that we're actually driving some traffic to these guys. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow night. Between now and then, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.
God bless America.
Enjoy the closing video.
Praise you, we thank you for so many things. We clearly see what's happening. The censor us, slander us, tell us we're wrong. We pray for mercy, we pray for love. We ask, we plead for help from above. Convince us, they prop up the garbage, just sell us their lies. They hate guns, but love their abortions. They cheat and they steal, and they're doing it now. We pray for mercy, we pray for love. We ask, we need some help from us. blankets, carpets, and